It is now my honor to introduce LBC alum Dr. Farhan Bhatti. Dr. Farhan Bhatti is a board-certified family physician and is currently the CEO and medical director of Carefree Medical, a nonprofit organization serving thousands of low-income, underinsured, and uninsured adults and children from across Metro Lansing. Dr. Bhatti completed his residency in the Sparrow Family Medicine Program in Lansing. He graduated from Lyman Briggs College with a degree in physiology and an additional degree in political science from Michigan State University. He also received his medical degree from the MSU College of Human Medicine. Dr. Bhatti is not content, however, with simply providing direct medical care. He is a founding member and current board member of the Committee of Protect Healthcare, a national political advocacy organization that promotes universal access to healthcare across America. He has appeared on television networks such as CNN and MSNBC, and he has testified at Justice Amy Coney Barrett's Supreme Court nomination hearings as a public health expert. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bhatti.
Thank you. Congratulations to the Lyman Briggs class of 2023. Every commencement speech applauds you for completing the long road you took to get it to this point. Graduation is the prize you have earned after facing and overcoming many barriers. This is a shining moment for you, your families, and everybody who's been rooting for you, from your first teachers, to your high school counselors, to your friends, and everyone in between. You endured grueling schedules, heavy class loads, labs, and so many other activities that are intended to enrich you as part of your college experience. But this graduating class has also gone through an unspeakable tragedy that has left scars, physical and emotional, on us here in East Lansing and on too many other young people in too many schools and too many communities across America. For them and for you, this year has been uniquely and devastatingly different. None of us can forget the events of February 13th. Even as we celebrate our graduates today, none of us can hide the sadness, the grief, the anger, and all the other emotions that you have every right to feel, and which will likely stay with us for a very long time. We see you, we hear you, and we will walk with you for as long as it takes. I'd like to thank Dean Charavel and all of you in attendance for this opportunity to share a few words with you. I'd like to thank the families, friends, and all those who have played a role in our graduates' journey to today, for cheering them on, for standing with them in sunshine and in rain, and for occasionally helping out with the rent. Believe me, you have no idea how much making rent correlates with acing classes. To you, the graduates of Lyman Briggs College of 2023, thank you for embodying the spirit of science, of curiosity, and wonder, and for living the Spartan spirit of grit and perseverance in the face of profound trial and trauma. I last spoke to the Lyman Briggs graduates in Commencement 2017 as an alumni speaker. Most, if not all of you, were still in high school. I had recently finished my residency training in family medicine, and I was just getting started with my career as a physician, leading Carefree Medical in Lansing, taking care of uninsured and underinsured adults and children. A lot has happened in your life and mine since 2017. You are here, and I got married and became a dad, welcoming the arrival of my daughter Zainab just over a year ago. Thank you. I have about 5,000 photos I'd love to share. But before I do that, I wanted to share just a few thoughts. I mention my daughter because she and you are at the heart of my remarks. 6 years ago, I encouraged the graduates who sat in the chairs you sit in today to use science as a shield against what were then new and aggressive attacks on your discipline, on our discipline, the discipline of science. Thinking back to those remarks, we didn't know it at the time, but 2017 was the watershed of the systematic and institutionalized assault on the facts, on science itself. And in many ways, the very reality that we as scientists work hard to explore, understand, and explain every day to as many people as possible in good faith and with all the information available that we have. In the 6 years since, the assault on science has taken many forms, gone through several mutations, and has led to devastating consequences. Let me share a small list. A bipartisan task force in 2019 found the federal government under the Trump administration suspended standards of impartiality and objectivity for federal agencies who were responsible for gathering and analyzing research and data that's required to make sound public policy. In 2018 and 2019, the federal government under the Trump administration muzzled, censored, and buried data and information on climate change that would have helped us make sound decisions in preparation for greater resiliency and recovery in a whole range of areas, from land management to agriculture to conservation and resource stewardship. Between 2017 and 2020, the federal government was the single most significant obstacle to meaningful reforms on gun safety. By promoting flawed research, false information, fake scapegoats, and faulty logic. None of this is a thought experiment or an academic exercise. In my field of medicine, the most insidious and dangerous example of anti-science truly blossomed during the COVID-19 pandemic, when disreputable sources of news and information spread blatantly false information about the virus. 3 years later, we now know much more about COVID-19 than we did when it was raging through our communities. Data, research, and evidence tell us that the virus is airborne, highly contagious, able to mutate, fatal for some people, benign for others, and capable of causing long-term harm to vital organs like the heart, lungs, and kidneys. We also know what can help protect us against the virus. But data also tells us that even as I say these things, a decent number of people disagree with me. Despite my experiences and experiences of many medical professionals throughout the pandemic, when we cared for people who couldn't breathe, for people with failing hearts and lungs, for patients who passed away, for survivors who struggle with shortness of breath long after they've apparently recovered. Despite all this, a large segment of our population continues to doubt doctors' and scientists' experiences of and expertise in medicine, epidemiology, and public health. This doubt and denial comes at a steep price. Had our public health infrastructure been more robust in the first year of the pandemic, had our national leaders been more resilient and vigilant against disinformation and doubt, nearly 500,000 people might still be alive today. And that's according to The Lancet, a highly respected, reputable, peer-reviewed medical journal. And because of widespread disinformation, nearly 1 in 4 Americans now say they have no confidence, zero confidence in medical professionals and scientists. I hate to be the one to break this news to you guys, But that means 1 in 4 Americans have zero confidence in all of you. With your training, education, and expertise, you will be entering the world ready to make change, to improve lives, to move the world. And yet some of the people you hope to help will call you names that should only be reserved for bad drivers. For doctors serving during the pandemic, we experienced how urging people simply to wear a mask in large gatherings or get a vaccine led to conflict or sometimes even violence. But because this is a commencement speech, and all commencement speeches must impart some hope and wisdom, I have this modest suggestion. Do not lose your faith in your chosen profession. Do not give up. And equally important, if not most important, do not hide. Because thanks to the way the world is today, your profession now also requires you, whenever appropriate, to persuade, push, and move hearts and minds, now more than ever. While you represent science, an antagonist known as anti-science exists in today's world. When I say anti-science, I don't mean forms of thought that may sometimes appear opposed to science, but that often happily coexist with science. For example, anti-science does not refer to love or matters of the heart or one's personal faith. We can experience all of these things without excluding science. Anti-science is not an alternative method of rigorous and precise investigation, experimentation, and verification. Anti-science is a political attitude that celebrates ignorance. Anti-science puts noise ahead of knowledge. Anti-science ultimately aims to invalidate not just the work that you're going to do, but in many respects, invalidate you yourselves. Ironically, the antidote to anti-science may not necessarily be more science. In fact, studies over the last half-century continue to show that empirical evidence does not always change people's minds. For many people, their beliefs are remarkably resilient against facts, even facts that may seem logically and painfully obvious. Confirmation bias, belief perseverance, and the backfire effect, just to name a few concepts in psychology, all conspire to sabotage the very thing that we as scientists believe to be our best counteroffensive: more information, more numbers, and more proof. The physicist Max Planck said, quote, "New scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die, and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it," end quote. Instead of waiting that long, or instead of wishing death on people who oppose science, I propose that you, as scientists, join the public town square. Use what you know, not just to spread knowledge, but also to inspire. Henry David Thoreau, America's most truly American philosopher, wrote in Walden, quote, "Shams and delusions are esteemed for soundest truths, while reality is fabulous," end quote. Fabulous in the sense of magical, inspiring stories that can move people. And as a quick aside, in that same essay, worth noting is also the fact that Thoreau said he aspired to live like a Spartan not once, but twice. While data can fight disinformation, it doesn't always move people, not by itself without any context. Instead, I urge you all to practice using data to tell compelling stories. Because climate change is as much a story about how the top 2,300 feet of ocean are warming at 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit since 1901, as it's also a story about disruptions in weather and drought that devastate crops and farm families, or about catastrophic flooding that can force families to flee, as we're seeing with more regularity all around the world. Likewise, artificial intelligence is more than just science, or the science and technology of large language models. AI is also the story of discovery and deception, who uses which for what, and how these affect our neighbors as much as our national security. For a growing number of doctors, our roles have completely shifted. Mindful of privacy laws, we're telling stories about our patients' challenges to television cameras and to senators. Doctors are sharing our experiences about caring for patients who must live with profound traumas of every sort to advocate for mental health resources, for healthcare in underserved communities, for health, and yes, for common sense, reasonable safety measures to promote safety and reduce gun violence. We can do all this humbly. We are not infallible. As scientists, however, we are self-correcting. Because we deal in observed phenomena, we demand proof. We demand testability and repeatability. We expect refutation and invalidation. And if we're doing our jobs correctly, we respond by pursuing better proof. We, the community of today's scientists, must also now respond with better stories, rooted in evidence and empathy. Scientists are now becoming louder advocates for our profession. We communicate, contribute to policy discussions, and we debunk junk science. The professional landscape you will be entering is also riddled with cultural fault lines that you can help bridge by restoring public confidence in the use of legitimate science for medicine, technology, and public policy making. In the 6 years since the onslaught against science began in full force, more scientists have begun standing with faith and community leaders, policymakers, and educators to help remove the stains of pseudoscience with the cleansing light of empiricism by telling more compelling stories. What I've learned after years of serving as a doctor and speaking out in the public arena is that the overwhelming majority of Americans share a common vision for a common good. We all want clean drinking water, affordable health care, jobs that allow us to raise a family, jobs that anticipate an evolving economy, sustainable energy, and yes, schools and universities that are safe and free from gun violence. And for many, if not all of you, your expertise and your education in the sciences can inform and influence all of this and so much more. Our Constitution affirms this task that awaits you. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution states, quote, promoting the progress of science and useful arts, end quote. The role of and reason for science is enshrined in the American soul, right next to free speech, the right to vote, protections against unlawful searches and seizures, and yes, the Second Amendment. Most commencement speakers are expected to impart some wisdom, so I'm going to keep trying. The history of science is full of heroes who stood up to the prevailing orthodoxy, who spoke out and debunked myths with the scientific method, providing humankind with course corrections that enabled progress and empowered people. Galileo and the heliocentric universe, Marie Curie and radioactivity as an atomic property, Charles Darwin and evolutionary biology, Al-Khwarizmi, who gave us the algorithm, which touches everything from medicine to automotive production and space travel. Science is also full of unsung heroes whose work and diligence has added to the wealth of human knowledge. Some of you may win Nobel Prizes. Some of you may become rock star nerds who bring physics and astronomy into the mainstream, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, or before them, Carl Sagan, and before him, Leonardo da Vinci. And some of you may make great discoveries or pioneer new methods away from the spotlight, like a little-known Iraqi scientist named Al-Haytham, who in the 10th century came up with the advice to observe, hypothesize, experiment, revise, and repeat, the scientific method that is taught today in middle schools across the world. Behind every satellite we launch and every Webb space telescope, teams of anonymous scientists are working with their heads down, their brains in overdrive, and their hearts open to worlds of possibilities, like Mary Jackson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Katherine Johnson. Black women who broke ground as human computers at NASA that sent mankind into space. Scientists open up new worlds. And increasingly these days, scientists can also stop bad choices by standing up and speaking out. This wasn't always the role that scientists played in society, but it's a role all of us must embrace in order to course correct the decline in public discourse that plagues America and that America is exporting all around the world. My one-year-old daughter, your children, and the world you shape in the years to come are counting on you to do both, stand up and speak out. Because every job is social, every career has policy and political dimensions, and every scientific discipline touches a human soul. I hope that you'll join me in the fight against anti-science and safeguard the integrity of the careers that you all are about to embark on. Whether the next stop in your journey is a job or starting graduate school, remember that responsible citizens of the world are depending on you to share your compelling stories with the broader community and never grow tired of being a leading voice in public discourse. I challenge you to keep this promise to science and to our shared humanity. Thank you, and congratulations to the graduating class of 2023.